The only thing better than grabbing an object with one hand is grabbing an object with two hands. In this video, I'm just going to go over a quick little guide on using the XR Interaction Toolkit to grab with two hands. And make sure to stick around to the end while I'm going to show you a little bonus thing where you can play with the center of gravity, so when you throw objects around, it kind of behaves how you'd expect them to. Now, for this tutorial, I'm going to use this sledgehammer right here, and I'll link it in the description below, and you can use it if you want, or you can just follow along with whatever object you want. Hopping into the project, you can see here that I've already imported the sledgehammer that I'm going to use, and I'm just going to drag it into the scene and place it where I need it to be. Right here's good, and you'll notice, yeah, it's big, it's pink, and to fix that, it's just because I'm using the universal render pipeline, and it's upset at the material, not using the right shader. So I'm going to come up here, I'm going to go to Universal Render Pipeline and go to Lit. And after that's loaded, you'll see it's still not rendering correctly. And that's because it's kind of zeroed out the textures that should go here. So if we go over to the textures and just drag this one here, and then we will drag this one here. Ta-da! And now we have a nice looking sledgehammer. Now, next up, what I'm going to do is I am going to add some box colliders for both the head and the handle of this. And so I'm going to do that by just creating two empty game objects. Now that I have these in the scene, I'm going to add a box collider to each and then enter in some quick values. All right, and there's the head. That's looking pretty good there. Next up is the handle. All right, and there we go. So if you see here, I have the center here and the size set to these. So if you just want to copy those, go for it. And for the head, also the same, the center and the size. And now that we have a sledgehammer here and we have some box colliders, next we need to make it a grab interactable. So that's as easy as we've done before. We just go to XR grab interactable. And it's going to slap a rigid body on here. And I'm going to go ahead and change the collision detection to continuous dynamic just so it doesn't go flying through this table. Now, in order to make this an XR grab or a two-handed grab interactable, we just got to come down here and go to select mode, go to multiple, and it should work. But we should probably also add one of the colliders that we did here. Let's just add the handle. There we go. Now, if we boot up the scene, you'll see that I'm able to grab with my right and left hand, and yeah, it's kind of working, but it is flying through the table, so there's some things we can probably tweak here. Now, the reason it was flying through the table is because this movement type right here is set to instantaneous, so it's just going to ignore all physics when we're handling it, and it's just going to follow our hands no matter what. In order to have it interact and kind of run into objects while we're still holding it, you got to change it to velocity tracking. Another thing you'll notice is it wasn't too dynamic with its attach point. When I grab onto it, it just attaches to the center, and then the second hand's allowed to attach wherever it wants to. So if we wanted to do dynamic attaching and attach to wherever we grab this object, well, you'd have to come down here to dynamic attach, set it to true, and let's boot up and see what we got. Now you can see that when I grab it, I can grab it from any point and it doesn't send me right to the center. And also when I push it against the table, it no longer flies through it. So cool. That's working. Now, as cool as dynamic attach is, and as fun as it is for people to be able to interact with objects dynamically like they would in the real world, in a game, you might want to limit your player's ability to interact with this object however they want, because then it'll be just easier for them to use the tool in the game. So for this, as an example, let's say you wanted to use it as a weapon, you're hitting zombies or something. You want it to kind of just attach in an upright position, and then the second attach point, you want them to be able to hold it down here, and you don't want the player to have to think too much about it. So how we're going to do that is just by giving it multiple attach points. So to do that, I'm going to create two empty game objects. There we are, and then I'm going to change some of these things really quickly. So you'll notice here that I set this, that nothing too big of a difference there, but yeah, I sent this to about the center. That's where I want my first attach point to be, and then -90, -90. So make sure that your view is set to local here, and I want to be able to see what the local rotation is. So obviously I want the head of the hammer to be kind of pointed upwards, so the Y position needs to be pointing upwards, and then I want the face of this hammer right here to be facing forward, and that is oriented by this right here. And finally, we have the X position. That's going to be pointed to the palm of the hand. So when I pick this up, it's probably going to rotate a little bit and snap to. Then I'm going to just change the values for the second attach point. All right, and you'll see here I've done pretty much the same thing. So if we go back over to the sledgehammer, if I come down here, now since I'm using attach points, I'm gonna go ahead and turn off dynamic attach here, and then I'm gonna drag the first attach point here and the second attach point there. And let's boot up and see what we have. Now you see when I go and grab it, it just kind of snaps and pushes itself upward, and it just makes it a lot easier for me to handle. Now there's no right way of doing this. It really just depends on your use case. If you want to use dynamic attach or if you want to use multiple attach transforms. And also you might want to play with the smooth scale. So smoothing how it follows the movement of the controllers and see what feels right for you there as well. Now before I wrap this whole thing up, one other thing I want to show you is the center of gravity. So obviously the head of this hammer should be heavier than the handle of the hammer. And a way you can play with that is, well, it does have a center of gravity here, but I've found it not to be too useful. You can't really see anything that you're changing. So I have found a script that can help you out. So I'm just going to add that really quickly to this object. And I just named mine center of gravity, and let's open up and see what we have. Now, this is a really simple script. All we do here is we have a public vector of 3 where we're going to tell it where the center of mass is. At the beginning, we store the rigid body, and then we set the center of mass to the public one that we're setting. And then here in the update function, I only have this running during play mode because we can adjust and play with this as it's active, and then we will call RB wake up, which just makes sure that the physics is enabled on our game object. And I only want this during play mode because, well, calling this all the time, and if you had this on all your objects, that would mean all of your physics or rigid body objects are awake and being calculated on, and that is not cost efficient. So just be careful there. If things are getting a little buggy for you and you're using this script, it's because this guy's being called all the time. And then finally, we have on draw gizmos. This will just draw a little sphere so we can visualize where the center of mass is going to be. So let's come back to the editor and show you what I mean. While I have play mode active here, what we can do is we can adjust this center of mass to wherever we want. That's what this little yellow dot's gonna be. So if I come down here to the script center of mass, and move it upwards. See, and we'd expect the center of mass to be somewhere around here, but I don't know, play around, have fun with your objects, see what you can do with this. Whee! Now for myself, I'm gonna say that the center of mass of this object is here, and you know what, I'm going to turn on some objects that I can hit with the hammer, and I am going to start up and see what we're working with. You see, I can pick things up, I can slam things around, and it's starting to feel pretty good here, and it orients the way I need it to. And look at that, when I throw it over there and come over, yeah, the center of gravity is just not having it flip off like it normally would if I didn't set it. See, look at that, it can hang on the edge. So there you go. Hey, if you guys found this useful and just want to download the scripts, you can do so over at my Patreon, which I'm going to say, hey, Patreon members, thank you again, as always, for keeping me afloat, and I'll see you all in the next one. Bye-bye.